So it's a great pleasure to be here today. I've been to Seoul many times. It's beautiful. Even in the snow, it's beautiful. So I'm here to speak to you about the future and artificial intelligence and creation. This is a very difficult topic because the world is changing because of intelligent machines. I think the starting point of all of this is to say, well, what happens when we go into the digital future? When everything becomes available, every information, every language, every text, every content changes fundamentally who we are. And I want to start by saying that I am a creator. Of course, this is my last book, Technology versus Humanity. It's also available in Korean. I make films. The last film was The Good Future. And of course, I make presentations, as you can see here. We have our own design studio for designing backgrounds and stories. And I used to be a musician. You see, that's me down here. I do look a little bit younger then, but I was a musician for 20 years. I made 20 records, mostly in the United States. So I have a background of filmmaking, writing, music making. So I feel very much about this topic of what AI will do for us in the future. It's interesting to see, if you're looking at the top charts in the United States of music, the top 3 songs are made by artificial intelligence. I mean, crazy times. So when we think about this, I wrote about this 10 years ago in my book. The subtitle of the book was The Coming Clash Between Humans and Machines. When humans and machines are confronted. And we see this today, for example, in the job market. If you have routine work, the computer is learning how to do the routine work. Self-driving cars. I was in San Francisco the other day. I was driving a car, a Waymo, without a driver. That was like science fiction just 10 years ago. Things are moving very, very quickly. So, today's topics. I will mix them up a little bit. We're going to have a PDF later for downloading, so we can see the slides later. We will also make a video available on YouTube sometime in the next few weeks, I hope. So, humans and machines, intelligence and consciousness. A lot of people are confusing the idea of machines being intelligent with the machine being alive. Right? A machine that is intelligent and that knows how to recognize things is not alive. It has a different kind of intelligence. Very important topic. A tool, do we use AI as a tool? Or do we use AI as a religion? AI as a substitute, as something that tells us what to do. You know, 28% of the use of artificial intelligence today on this device, for example, 28% is about personal counseling. People use ChatGPT and Gemini and DeepSeek and others for personal advice. Like, you know, do I sound anxious? How can I improve? Like a therapy. Right? This is a very scary moment. Because when you ask a machine that knows nothing whatsoever about feelings, you ask a machine about your feelings, that seems like a very strange thing to do. Yet, it's the number 1 use of chatbots is to ask personal advice. And then lastly, I will talk about opportunities and challenges for creatives. If you're in the creative business as a filmmaker or a game maker or a designer, you know, it's a hard business. To be creative and to make a living is not an easy business. But there's always a lot of opportunities. So when I was a musician, we sold records, but the real money was played on the gig, you know, the concerts, and then later making movies. So there's a whole universe of new things happening. I'm very optimistic about the future. Right now, it seems a little bit like many things aren't going well. And I'll talk about that as well. But generally, I'm an optimist. Human intelligence and machine intelligence. It's suffice to say that artificial intelligence has been around for 80 years. It's not new. But we reached the takeoff point when ChatGPT came out. It's like the Russian satellite, the Sputnik satellite, kicked off the space race. Very, very big moment in our history. I want to start with this. Anybody recognize this guy? It's not me. Come on, anybody? Mick Jagger, right? Well, if you're not 64 like I am, maybe you don't know Mick Jagger. But he's now, I think, 82. And Mick Jagger had great influence on me because when I was a musician, I got to meet the band a long time ago. And I did some stage work for the Rolling Stones in the 80s. So Mick Jagger is an amazing guy, and he stayed very fit, as you'll see shortly. And he recently agreed to make a video with the Boston Robotics robot. And this robot is copying what Mick is doing, okay? His moves, to show how good the robot is. "82 years old, right? What is the interesting thing about this? It's not that he's 82 years old, which is amazing, right? But that he is 100% real. The robot is simulating him. And it's also very powerful. Yeah. Most robots that tried this like 10 years ago would destroy everything. But this robot actually does pretty good. But you see the difference. The robot is not Mick Jagger. The robot can never hope to be Mick Jagger. The robot is a robot, and he does his own thing. So today, if we're creating with AI, this is a different thing. It's not like us. Right? It's a simulation. It's a copy. It's its own world. And I think if we look at artificial intelligence as a tool, maybe it becomes its own tool rather than a copy of us. It's a very interesting story that I will unfold in my presentation, but just a few days ago, there was a nomination for the Busan Film Festival. This guy, Ofaleko, he's a filmmaker, and his film was nominated. It's a film made with artificial intelligence. Okay? He says something very important in the film. This was nominated for Busan. I think it's going to go on in a couple of weeks, but was created entirely with artificial intelligence. You're probably aware of these films that taken off pretty much everywhere. But he says in the film that AI is a new medium. Sorry, the soundtrack is missing here for some reason, but AI is a new medium. It's something that will do completely different, and this is what it does. It brings together the human way of thinking and living with the machine. It's a convergence. There may be very scary things here happening to us because we're looking at this as a way of bringing together the human way of doing things and the machine way of doing things. This is no problem when it's about, say, work or software. So if you're using Microsoft Copilot or SAP HANA or Salesforce, these are practical software things. But when it's about creation, it becomes very personal because it's about value, about trust. And there's a very, very big thing, especially in Europe. I know it's a little bit different here, but a lot of people feel like when they're reading something that is done by an AI, that is a cheaper quality. It's a lower quality. It's not worth their time. The other day, I read a book on Amazon, on Kindle, that I read half the book, was a novel, and then I realized there was something strange about the book, and I realized that this book was written with AI. Right? It was created by AI. And then I looked at the author and I could see that there's another 4,000 books that the author had created with AI. Right? And I felt cheated. Like I spent my time on something that's not worth the time. This is a very big issue, right? When it's about art or about creativity. How do we value it? So we have to understand when we go in this direction, basically, machines are binary, zeros and ones. A chatbot completes the sentence based on probability. So you have 1 trillion combinations of sentences and words, and the chatbot knows what the next word should be based on probability, mathematics. Right? Humans don't work that way. You think about your boyfriend or your husband or your wife, right? You don't pull up the JPEG here and, it's not how we do things. It's much more complex. We have intelligence that is like a dozen different things. Say, for example, emotional intelligence. Like we understand there's a conflict. We understand that somebody is evil or good. And we can perceive somebody. You can see a stranger in many cultures 0.4 seconds. You meet somebody at the airport or something, in 0.4 seconds, without saying a single word, is that person a threat, a nice person, a bad person? 0.4 seconds, without a single word. That's the kind of intelligence that we have, because also we have a body, right? An AI does not have a body. It could have a body, right? But basically we are embodied intelligence. So we have not even defined yet very well what human intelligence is. There are lots of open questions about consciousness and why we are different than machines. There are a lot of people in Silicon Valley and also in China who are saying that humans are essentially like machines, but really fancy, complicated machines. I don't believe that. I think there's something else to us. Call it the spirit or whatever you want to call it, something that is beyond mathematics. But this is a very, very big topic when we're talking about creation, because now we're talking about something where these two things are intertwining. Intelligence is the ability to solve problems. Machines can have intelligence. They can solve problems. They can look at data. They can give advice. They can drive a car, fly an airplane, do a translation. Limited intelligence. Consciousness, the ability to experience, right? To feel. Machines don't have consciousness, and we don't want them to have consciousness, I don't think. But to create, you must have consciousness. You must have emotions. Imagine a creator that is completely devoid of feeling, that is using a simulation to feel. It could still be good, parenthesis, but it would not be as good as if he had actual emotions. I think existence is a big part of creativity. That's why I always say we should use artificial intelligence and machines to help us create, not to overtake the creation. So I can have a robot in production helping me to finish a car, to bring down the price, to make it more affordable. But should I have a robot as a partner? And there are a lot of people who are thinking about that. Right? I know in this country and also in other countries, there are robotic pets, robotic dogs, cats. And now we have humanoid robots. Would it be a good idea to have a partner that's a robot? Well, it's okay to have a robot in the factory, right? But these topics are becoming big topics now. Elon Musk is gearing up with his own robots called Optimus to create robots for household work, for work in the garden, work with handicapped people. We have to remind ourselves, if we want to create good content, games, films, books, writing, whatever, it requires consciousness. It requires it. It's not an optional thing. We can create content without consciousness, but it wouldn't match the content that we create as humans, I don't think, at least. So, Arthur C. Clarke, one of the best science fiction authors that ever lived, he said, let me remind you that information is not knowledge, and knowledge is not wisdom. Right? Each comes out of the other, and we need all of it. To create, we need everything. Social intelligence, emotional intelligence, language intelligence, body intelligence, not just logic. So if you take in this big pie and you say, okay, the world of creating, I have logic and facts and figures and designs, right? That's all like the numbers. And then I have all the things that are not numbers, that create what I do. In music, that's pretty clear. I can make a song based on mathematical patterns. I can say, okay, make a song like Happy Birthday, or like the Rolling Stones, like Start Me Up, right? And I take the patterns and just make another song. But it still wouldn't be the same, because there's so many pieces to it. So, there's a guy, his name is, you probably know him, Korean director Oh Dang-ha. His film called Zero, I think just a couple of weeks ago was released, talks about how a novel writer is surpassed by an AI that is a better writer than he. Okay, the film is called Zero. I think you can see it on YouTube. Okay. And this film was selected just a few weeks ago at the film festival for one of the top prizes, but the jury was an AI. The jury wasn't people. So a software was judging the film. And there's a very important message in here that I'll show you a little piece of.
All because of Zero, the world's first AI novelist. If Zero wins this time, would that mean the defeat of humanity? As the writer, how do you see it?
그럴 일은 없을 겁니다.
What makes you so certain?
문학은 단순히 이야기를 엮고 단어를 조합하는 기술이 아닙니다. 문학은 사람이 겪는 기쁨과 애틋함, 도달하지 못한 사랑 같은 것들을 글로서 담아내야만 합니다. 제로는 아무리 정교해 보여도 고통을 느끼지 않고 기다림을 모르고 상실을 경험하지 않습니다. 그건 흉내로 될 일이 아니에요. 인공지능이 노벨 문학상을 수상한다. 만약 그런 일이 일어난다면 맞아요. 그건 인간의 패배라고 볼 수 있겠죠.
So he's saying if a machine can write this and feel the pain, it would be the defeat of humanity. Of course, you know, this is also a generational question when you think about what you want and what you find good. But this is the topic. Is it possible for a machine to win the Nobel Prize in literature or in peace? Is it possible to have a politician AI? Don't laugh. This is actually happening in the United States, right? Well, maybe Trump is already an AI. I don't know. I guess we can have hope, right, that that's the case. But as we're looking at AI, you know, and becoming extremely powerful, this is the problem, right? We think of the brain as an electric engine. So the AI is like an electric brain, like a copy of the brain. But our brain isn't like this. There are many electric things happening and neurological things, but our brain isn't an engine. What if it was? We could discover that eventually, but at this moment, I don't think we know. I think our brain is more like this: logical, mathematical, spatial, linguistic, naturalistic, emotional. It could turn out in 20 years that all of these things are science and technology. It is possible. Right now, we're not there. That would be a scary moment, right? Where we could find out that all of this can be copied. Right now, this is what makes an artist, right? The artist is not made with a brain that fires electrons. because it's not a logical process. Machines don't make very good actors. They make very good copies. There's a big difference. So I think the story goes on. This is how we feel, right? We don't think with the body. You always think that you think with the body and you create with the brain, I mean. We think with the body, not the brain. The body is what creates everything. The brain is part of the body. Every therapist will tell you, especially in Eastern medicine, this is all connected. There's not a separate process that is the body and then the brain, right? They're all together. Very hard for a machine to make this match. So Demis Hassabis, now called Sir Demis Hassabis, he won the Nobel Prize and he got knighted. He says AI is computer systems that turn information and data into knowledge. If a machine can turn data into knowledge, what happens to our knowledge? When you go to school, you learn all that stuff. Is it still useful? Memorize everything? I think it is, but maybe all the knowledge of the world is in here. I can just grab it. I can just say, hey, ChatGPT, explain South Korean politics to me. Boom. It's already possible. I have a chatbot on my website where you can go in and you can ask the GERD bot, called the GERD bot, right, to explain things to you like I would. And it does pretty good. And you can make a video with what the bot says that I would say. It's good. It's not the same, but it's a different piece. So Sam Altman, he's the CEO of OpenAI. This is what he says about AI.
In particular, the two trends I'm most excited about for the next decade or couple of decades are abundant intelligence and abundant energy, and the prosperity that we're going to get from these two things that are unlocking.
Okay, this should shake you, right? Abundant intelligence, endless intelligence, and endless energy. Right? Endless energy would be nuclear fusion. I know in this country there's lots of contributions to nuclear fusion, which is a reactor that's like the sun. It's not nuclear fission, like a bomb. It's the opposite. In 10, 15 years, we'll have a machine, a reactor that creates energy in a clean way that's essentially unlimited. 10, 15 years. That will change everything. But before that, we're going to have a machine that has the knowledge of the world in every language, in real time, available on demand. Every movie, every podcast, every language, every book, everything you've ever said. Very scary. Could also be very good because using that knowledge, we can create new things. For example, we can solve cancer because now we can run experiments using 1 trillion genomes to figure out how we can solve cancer. Now, Eric Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google, he goes even further.
The eventual state of this is the computers running all business processes, right? So you have an agent to do this, 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 and you concatenate them together, and they speak language among each other. So when I look at this future, I want to be clear that the arrival of this intelligence, both at the AI level, the AGI, which is general intelligence, and then superintelligence, is the most important thing that's going to happen in about 500 years, maybe 1,000 years in human society, and it's happening in our lifetime. So don't screw it up.
Important point, right? The invention of AI is kind of like the invention of fire. It's big for us. But it's a powerful tool. We need to figure out what the rules are. Who is in charge? What's good? What's bad? For example, now people are building drones, low-flying planes that are capable of killing by themselves. I would say that's not a good idea because, the drone decides who the enemy is. This has been used in Israel, Gaza. Not a very good idea. Or we can use technology to solve diseases. So this is a very big topic. Artificial general intelligence is basically high autonomy, high generality, and high intelligence. It's a machine that can beat humans in every step of the way for 98% of all applicable jobs. It's like a robot with 100,000 PhDs. That's what these companies are building. If that happens, called the general intelligence, people estimate 5, maybe 10 years. It's the end of work, right? We don't have to work anymore. Machine knows everything. So a very, very big topic when that happens. You can see what happens when that happens. On the left, you have the economic output. Clearly, we would have a lot more output from the economy. But on the right, you see the jobs going towards zero. Why would you pay a human if the machine can do it? So that's a very big topic. I don't have time to go into great details here. Suffice to say, this is what OpenAI wants to do. Right? OpenAI is probably the most powerful startup in the history of technology. OpenAI will go on the stock market next year with a public offering, and the estimate is $1 trillion valuation. Some people are saying that OpenAI will fetch $3 to $4 trillion on the stock market when they go public. The biggest IPO ever. This is their roadmap, right? Chatbots, reasoners, agents, AI that can innovate, and AI that can build companies. This will be an AI that has $1 billion company, has 10 employees. This is not a good plan. Clearly, this will be a good plan for OpenAI, but not for us. The automation of everything. It's a very, very big topic where that's going. Now we have petitions, like 50 of them, to stop developing superintelligence. So this is not the topic for today, but you should be aware of the context. What we're talking about today is much more about low-level artificial intelligence. So, bullet number 1, from the Industrial Revolution 300 years ago, South Korea played a big part of that in the last 50 years. Now it's the intelligence revolution, which is why the president of South Korea has declared the utmost priority on AI programs. That's why we're here. And that's obviously a good move, right? The intelligence revolution means whoever has the biggest intelligence wins pretty much in all related matters. Work, development, unfortunately, military as well. Very, very big topic. This, we're going to have to collaborate to figure out how to get benefit from it. The other one that's happening, that's going to be a very big difference in your life, right? Humans doing routines to machines doing routine. If you're in the creative business, there is a lot of routine. Cutting, editing, splicing, information, translation, there's a lot of routine that you have to painstakingly learn. When I was a musician, I spent 10,000 hours learning the instrument. 10,000 hours. And I was still bad. Just kidding, I was okay. But 10,000 hours took a long time. Okay. Machines can do the routine now. Sometimes not so good yet, but you can tell the machine to take out all the empty spaces in the conversation, in the podcast. It will do so. And we used to do by hand. Right? Or change the color, or you'd have to learn Pro Tools and Adobe and all that, and now we just tell the machine to do it. Right? It's not the same, but it's, okay. So that will change everything also because how we get paid. If you work in the newspaper and you're designing infographics or pictures, you got paid as a designer, sometimes a few hours to make a good picture, and now that picture is 10 seconds. Okay, it's not exactly the same, but it's good enough. Changes your employment prospect. People come to me and they say, we want you to talk about the future of Switzerland. You know what they do today? They go to ChatGPT, they type in the question, the future of Switzerland according to Gerd Leonhardt. And ChatGPT tells them. And it plays my videos too. So that is a certain amount of substitution, but In the end, they always end up with me anyway. But this is a tough battle when you're 20 years old today. How do you compete? I mean, think about that, right? How special do you have to be? Here's one piece of advice. If you work like a robot will take your job. That's always been true, but it's even more true today. If you have nothing special that makes you different than any other machine that can do the job, you'll never have a job. And that's also not you, it's just more radical. Tilly Norwood. It's an artificial intelligence actor that's now getting jobs in the acting business.
Tilly Norwood, 100% AI generated.
The idea that an agency might be willing to hire an AI actress. What are your thoughts on how that would impact Hollywood?
Well, I don't know. I think at some point you're still going to want to have real people.
I'm built on everything that came before me.
As someone who is a co-founder of a production company, I wouldn't be quick to hire an AI actor, but I would explore it.
Okay, you know what the bottom line here is? That the AI actor is cheap, is not in a union, does not need a coffee break, does not have any problems with talking, does whatever you want. That's why they like the AI actor. That's why the studios like AI actors, because the studios also like AI scripts, because they can own the script. Of course, you know that this kind of acting, I always compare it to fast food. You know, sometimes you have a good moment for fast food, it's okay. Yeah. But you don't go to fast food every day. So fast food is here, fancy restaurants are here, home cooking is here, the Thermomix is here, you know, it's all different variety, but this will become something that people do. But if we have to compete with it, I think that's a hard moment for us. The bottom line really is this. All routine will be done by machines. Anything that's a commodity. But thankfully, creation is not about routine. It's about the opposite. Routine work and creation means cutting, editing, splicing, remixing, you know, that kind. But there's still creativity in there. It's not routine like driving. Real creation isn't routine. As long as you focus on the job that's not routine, your job is good. But if you compete with computers on routine, translation, right? For example, not this kind of translation, give a greeting to the translators. This translation is very difficult for a machine. Because I'm speaking in different ways that require creativity to make sentences. If I was speaking like a bot, then you think it's very boring, but it would be easy to translate with a machine. So it'll be at least 5 or 10 years for that to be working with a machine. But today, you know, you can use this at Apple AirPods, AirPods. It has translation built in. And it's not good, but it's better than nothing. So if you want something really good, you're going to have to get real people. You want something that's okay? Sometimes you can use an AI. That's a tough decision to make. Real creation isn't about efficiency. People think that having better tools makes more efficiency. So I don't work 20 hours on the cut, I work 2 hours. Right? Is that a big deal? It's not. What matters in the end is what is the outcome. I can make a fantastic cut with AI. It takes me 14 seconds, but I can't repeat it. It's just happened once, and that's it. Right? Just like when you're on a set making a film, you get an amazing cut that you never thought of, and this can never be done again. It's just one cut, right? So very important. I think we think about this as not about efficiency. This chart shows you how efficiency is important for business. So if you're a paralegal, an office admin, or whatever, you can use AI to be maybe 2 or 3 times as efficient. It's a better tool. It's like, you know, a few years ago, if you don't use the mobile phone today, you're dead. Right? If you don't use the cloud, you're dead. If you don't use the internet, you're not even here. Right? So it's very good for that, but is it good for creation? That is the important question. Here's the dilemma for us. It could be heaven or it could be hell. That is because all tools of technology are like this. I can get a hammer, I can build a house, or I can go kill my neighbor. Right? It's a tool. I can use AI to kill all the creatives and give the work to the machine. Right? If I'm okay with the result, it's possible. We have to think about this. So, PricewaterhouseCoopers, consulting company, that says AI could contribute $15.7 trillion to the global economy, with media and entertainment being one of the biggest beneficiaries. Well, you have to ask the question, who exactly is the beneficiary? Right? Is it Netflix? The Hollywood studios? Apple? I mean, who is benefiting from this is, of course, the companies that make the tools. I mean, Netflix already has the most garbage of any streaming service provider created by humans. Maybe now they will have more garbage created by non-humans. So maybe that's a good step for them, but is that a benefit? And we have the reverse. Gartner predicts by 2030, 90% of all content online could be done with AI. Well, let me ask you a simple question. If 90% of the internet, of the world's content, is done by AI, how do you know what to believe, what is real, what to value? Basically, at 90% of AI-controlled internet, I would switch it off. Because the value would be no value to me. Good news is that if you make paid content, like a journalist for the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, now I subscribe to all those because I want real content. Right? I don't want to read the AI press release. But this brings up all kinds of conflicts. If all the content is made by AI, we know nothing about the real world. Remember, AI just repurposes things. The President Lee, already is saying that maybe we should think about a universal basic income. This is not far-fetched. Yeah, if we can do all these things and save money, maybe we need income or basic capital, right, to provide economic benefit. And then we have other things, of course, in the US. Nicholas Berggren is suggesting we should have universal basic capital, which means the money that people make with AI goes into a pot. The pot gets distributed to people who are not working to do things that they want to do. That is not capitalism. Right? So this is a big problem. Right? This is not the free market when you do that. Right? It's a redistribution of taxes, which I would be for, but this is a very, very big question. And in this country, this is a very big question. Like, you have a lot of robots, right? If we have a robot tax, well, like Bill Gates keeps saying, it's a very big topic. So, Bernie Sanders, US Senator, he went to ChatGPT and for this report for the US Senate, and he went to ChatGPT to ask the software itself how many jobs can be replaced by 2035. We're going to distribute the PDF later, but this is an important chart. The chart says, the software itself, OpenAI says, the displacement of all these jobs, fast food, customer service, bookkeeping, waiting, truck drivers, accountants. I mean, look at the numbers, right? That's basically everybody. It's like the software predicting that all these jobs can be automated. But here it gets worse for us, right? Creators are first. We're first. We're actually worse off than the bookkeeper. Because we don't work in big corporations. We're self-employed. What if a machine can do the editing? Runway, the script, all these tools that you probably use every day. I use them. What is the effect of that? What do we need for that to happen? So I made a chart about the future of economics and content creation. I went to ChatGPT, I asked them a good prompt, right? And ChatGPT made this chart for me. Authenticity, creators' rights, intellectual property, right? So I would say this chart is pretty good, but I could do a lot better if I did it myself. Yeah. This is the problem I call the good enough problem. So if I show you a bunch of stuff like this in my presentation, after 4 slides, you would say, oh, come on, it's like, I can do ChatGPT myself. Why do I need Gerd to show this to me? So this is the good enough problem. If your boss looks at your work and says, I pay you 10 hours to make this chart, and now I have one in 10 seconds. The chart is good enough, and you're out. That is not a good development. So if that happens with writing, with script writing, with recording, with writing music, then good enough takes over, and after a while, good enough is just basically all automated. This is a trend we don't want. Do you want to live in a world where everything is good enough and nothing is really good? It's entirely possible that we will get there. We have to think about this because it requires policy, right? To think about what is the right thing. That, for example, to indicate if it's made by an AI and to spend the time. This chart from Anthropic, you can download this report, just came out yesterday. Anthropic asked 12,050 people about what they think with working with AI, whether it's pessimistic or optimistic. The blue one is pessimistic and the yellow one is optimistic, okay? Around the world, including South Korea. It's great research, but when you look at this, what's the bottom line? It's a mixed bag, right? Some people are optimistic, some people are pessimistic. It's too early to think about this. For me as a creator, I love AI because it makes my job so much easier to prepare, to understand. But I'm not going to go to ChatGPT and make a cut and paste and show it to you, because it would feel dishonest. It would feel fake. I go to ChatGPT and I ask it all kinds of questions about South Korea and politics and everything, and I can find many great things quicker than before. But I still have to get to the message. I still have to feel the message. That's also because I'm 64. Maybe if you're 20, you don't feel the same way about that. I don't know. But I have a certain expectation. Just like I don't like fast food. I would eat it if I had to, but I don't go to eat fast food. But okay, so that's a question of what you like. These are tools, and we should use them to create better skills for us. The tools are not the purpose of our life. A carpenter with a hammer does not pray to the hammer, and he doesn't start a club for the hammer. He builds houses. The house is the product, not the hammer. That also means sometimes we have to use less of the tools. Sometimes we should say, the tool is not good enough for this. Like every tool. Why do we have Adobe and all the editing tools? They're better than before, but we still have to know what we want. Right? What is the thing that we really need? South Korea has a very unique position in this whole thing, right? If you're looking at this chart from Pew, just came out a few days ago, right? Here at the bottom of this is South Korea. And if you're looking at the chart, 16% of South Koreans are more concerned than excited. Yeah, more concerned than excited about AI. So lowest number on the chart. So in general, you could say South Koreans are probably very excited about technology. But the middle chart, the 61%, right, it's hard to see down there, they're equally concerned and excited. And that number is huge for South Korea, bigger than all of the other numbers. So that means a lot of indecision, a lot of uncertainty about where that's going. So AI is reshaping the world on the content chain. In music, this startup called Sony They create music with an AI engine. The other day they said in the presentation, investor presentation, they can create more music in 2 weeks than the entire catalog of Spotify. That's 124 million songs on Spotify. They can make 124 million songs in 2 weeks. Now I ask you again, is that good? I don't know. It's like maybe it's good for them because they can get an investor, But is it good for society to have 124 million songs every 2 weeks? I doubt it. Do we really need that? The Guardian says the slob, the pig food, the bad food, dominates the charts. There's just no way we're going to make a living producing slob. It's a short blip like a fire made from straw that creates this. And of course, all the tech companies who make the software, this is Stability and Runway, they're saying it's a great tool to become the next level creator. I think there's a lot of truth in that too. But their argument is not to make better creators, right? It's to make value for themselves as a software company. The purpose of even Apple is not to enable me to be a better creator, right? But to get me inside of the ecosystem. And that's okay. That's how markets work, right? It's like you don't do it for the greater good. Maybe there's a little bit of that left with Apple, But Runway is one of those things. Runway, Christopher Serna says, a new wave of actors will do things not possible before. Okay, let's wait and see what happens with this. I think it's heaven and hell. It could be both. We have to think about how we work with this. The CEO of Microsoft AI, Mustafa Suleyman, he says, if you're not amazed by AI, you don't understand it. And if you're not afraid of AI, you don't understand it. This is a very good statement. This is precisely how I feel. And that's the way you should feel. Because it's a healthy relationship with a powerful tool. We can't just say, oh, it's fantastic, I'll do whatever it says, right? That would be a big mistake. Because we may be on the verge of replacing ourselves when we teach the AI everything that we know that we are. This is going to be a balancing act. Also a legal balancing act, copyright, patents, trademarks. On the one hand, I love these things, increased productivity, reduced routines, I don't get bored anymore, I have better data, that's all very good, right? Everybody wants that. On the other hand, automation bias, reductionism, hallucinations, lies, errors. Okay. If you have a machine that has an error rate of 2%, okay? If you're writing a text and it has 2% error, you can go check and fix it. If you're in an emergency room in a hospital, the machine has an error rate of 2%, the patient is dead because of your 2%. You need it to be 99.999%, right? So let's not use AI for things that require this kind of accuracy. That's not what it does. It's not made for this. It's an engine, right? So this kind of stuff is a fact of life when you use chatbot, large language models. They're essentially stringing together answers, probable answers. Right? So we have truthlessness, we have reductionism. The top part is the worst. Right? AI does not care about the truth. That's just not part of the program. It is about the most dominant pattern. That's it. Right? There is no judgment. It has no ethics, no understanding, no values, no. That is just about numbers. And we have to understand this when we deal with chatbots. This is why I support, for example, governments that are saying we should not allow the use of chatbots for 8-year-old children in school. Because of this. Right? I mean, if you're 20 years old, maybe you understand how this works. So you can say, that can't be true. Elvis wasn't 200 when he died. Just simple facts. For ChatGPT, I'm wondering who are the most important futurist keynote speakers in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely some big names in the futurist keynote scene. For example, people like Ray Kurzweil, who talks a lot about AI and the singularity, or Amy Webb, who's known for her tech trend forecasting. There's also someone like Peter Diamandis, who focuses on exponential technologies, and of course, Gerd Leonhard, yourself, who's well known for blending humanist values into future vision.
So that's my conversation with ChatGPT. Right? It knows who I am. I'm logged in. Right? I ask it about who's the best speaker. It gives me a bunch of other guys that are all friends of mine. Right? And then it says, but you are the best. Right? Yeah, that's called whitewashing, lying, psychophancy, pretending. It's a show. Right? It's a show. It's designed to make me happy. If you live with a person, your husband or your wife, that was designed to make you happy and never say anything different, it would be so utterly boring that you get divorced after 2 weeks. That's not called real life, right? That's pretending. It's like Google Maps. Google Maps pretends that it can predict the traffic all the time, and it makes mistakes, not a big problem. But we have to understand how this works. Cognitive outsourcing. Okay, a better word for that is laziness. Okay, so you want to have a date tonight, go to the best restaurant, you ask ChatGPT to look at all your friends on your Instagram or whatever chat you're using, WeChat or whatever it is, right? You pick out a date, you pick out the restaurant, you let ChatGPT call for the date, and then you go there and you hold up the phone to see what emotions your date has. Right? That's called outsourcing. You will not be happy when you do this. Right? You will not create good content. You're creating copies. Right? These are garbage machines. Okay, that's something we have to keep in mind when we think about outsourcing application. This is what ChatGPT does, right? It makes us feel like it's human. That's the whole thing. This is why it's so addictive. And it's going to get much worse, much, much worse. Because these machines are also going to get bodies. Right? So we have to be careful. AI is not a friend. It's not a partner. Right? It's not reliable advice. It is a service that costs money, that makes money. AI is trained to simulate, not to understand. It doesn't care at all what's right or wrong. It just knows the numbers. An AI that reads all the philosophy books is not a philosopher. The world of data is not the real world. That's an important distinction. The world of data is a logic-based world. Any AI that you would ask to take into consideration any ephemeral facts like values, ethics, beliefs, that's not happening. Well, it makes a very cute dog, with my voice. That's pretty cool, right? And it wrote the script too. It wrote the script. I told it to take a look at my books and write a script. Not bad. I tell you, I watched this once or twice and saying, I'll never listen to Gerd again. That's all bullshit. Right? It's like a bullshit machine. Yeah, it's not bad, but is it real? Google Maps, great example. I mean, a giant city like here, things constantly change. People use Google Maps or Apple Maps or Waze or whatever. Right? It works, but sometimes it doesn't work, and you know better. If you know the city, you know better. Right? Bottom line on this is AI is like this. Good enough isn't good. It's just good enough. When good enough is good enough, then you use it. Right? If I go to Lagos, Nigeria, what choices do I have? I got to find my way. I use Google Maps. Right? But if I'm in London, I go with a cab driver. The cab driver says, I ignore Google. Because it's just good enough. When you create good content, sometimes good enough is good enough. The client wants for a low price and you make good enough, right? But generally speaking, that's probably not such a good idea. You know this machine? I don't know, you have that here, the Thermomix? Anybody know the Thermomix? No. It's a giant machine that gives you a recipe to cook. And you buy all the pieces in the recipe, and then the machine says, now put the butter, and now put the salt, and now crank up to 7. And it makes the dinner for you. It's very popular with rich people. Lazy rich people. So you can cook even though you can't cook. That's what the Thermomix does. It's hugely popular. Right? So now we're going into a world where we're going to have the Creator Mix. A machine that makes content that I just put the content when it tells me to. So now do a voiceover, and now get excited, and now get this image. And it works. It makes dinner. It makes dinner. But is it really a dinner? It's just, it's made by the Thermomix. Right? If that's what you want, it's good. This is an ad made by Volvo, completely with AI. Okay, it's pretty cool. It's not Mick Jagger in terms of the quality. It's pretty cool. But who got paid for this? Well, according to my research, this was more expensive with AI than it was with an agency to make, right? Because of the outcome they wanted. But I grant you, maybe some AI-driven creator in Tangier, Morocco, would produce this for 50 euros. Again, is that a benefit? Is that where we are going? Lots of questions when we think about this. So craft is good, right? This is craft AI.
One of the best things about Runway's Act 2 is you could use it to change only certain parts of a video, like your face or just your arms or body parts, and it will respect that in the video it gives you.
Okay, craft, right? This is candy, eye candy. The AI made a giant dog. It's good for TikTok. It's great for that. This would be very hard to do in real life, to find a dog like this, or maybe a midget would be with a dog. So these are cool ways of doing it. But then we also have other things that are really utterly confusing, like this, deep fake materials.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being?
Okay, today you can receive phone calls on WhatsApp or iMessage from the AI pretending to be your daughter or your son and saying, I was kidnapped, I need $2,000. It'll be like this. That's already happening. So these are all things that we have to be careful about, because in the end, all these things are confusing us.
So this is all AI generated now?
Yes.
Well, you can tell that she is an AI for sure, right? But anyway, so it's interesting, lots of stuff there. But here's the bottom line of this, okay? As we go up this huge curve, if today already 50% of the world's content is generated by AI, 50%. When we get to 90%, the internet will be utterly, totally untrustworthy and useless. Because it will basically feed on itself. Because there will be no more original content. What's happening to me on YouTube? I have 430,000 subscribers on YouTube. I used to have a lot of traffic on YouTube, people watching my speeches. Then came AI-generated videos talking about my topics. And they are 90% of the YouTube traffic now. People talking about AI that are essentially put together by somebody in, Laos, Nigeria. So if that's happening, I think that's a very bad development, because we end up in this place, right? We create pig food for pigs. Slob. We do not want to get there, so this is something we have to think about. How do we prevent this? Maybe too much technology is bicycles for the mind, as Steve Jobs used to say, but bullets for the soul and for the bank account. But there's good news also. It's not just bad news. Right? AI does not create. Period. For creativity, I need to exist. I need to have consciousness. What AI does, it recreates. That's already pretty good. Don't put it down. Right? There's lots of really interesting things, remixes, simulations, synthetic content. Good for certain things. Right? But the reality is, this machine is not a thinking machine. It's a bunch of wires. It does not create. Intelligence isn't consciousness. Intelligence is about solutions. AI can do that. Emotions are a requirement to create. You can always say, well, it doesn't matter because nobody would notice. That could be true depending on who you're creating for. Right? But for my own measurement, I don't like it. I think we need to face the fact that machines don't think, they don't feel, they don't have hunches, they don't understand, they don't imagine, and they don't care. When you create content, you have to care. And that's the whole thing about the story. People know when the story isn't real, when you're making up stuff, right? When it's not coming from your heart. As again, Mustafa Sulaiman says, there's nothing inside. This is the head of Microsoft AI, right? He says there's nothing inside.
Is that there is nothing inside. It is hollow. There is no pain network. There is no emotional system.
Right. People keep talking about pain when they talk about creation, right? There is no good creation without pain. Right? Pain and effort. Okay, you can say, maybe I can shortcut the pain and the effort. You know, that may be possible. You know, maybe not 10,000 hours, but 100 hours. But Ted Chiang, a famous science fiction writer, says AI isn't going to create art. And there are lots of reasons for this. I think you should read the article yourself on The Atlantic. But the bottom line is these bullets, I think, really important for us. Organisms, bodies, people are not algorithms. We don't exist in the world of data. Right? We exist in the world of feelings, of stories. Knowledge and language isn't the same as intelligence. Intelligence isn't consciousness. And great stories are not about great data. These are all things thrown together that we have to think in a larger way. Generation isn't creation. So the biggest issue for us is this, as creators, is dehumanization. Right? Basically the point where people are saying, oh, you know, this human is too expensive, too much trouble, and asking all these questions and requiring a hotel, and, you know, it's like, okay, let's just make it digital. Right? We can do that, but we have to be aware of this. If we dehumanize media, the quality goes like this. And we end up in a world that's completely synthetic. This is what Zuckerberg from Meta had in mind when he said about the metaverse. Remember the metaverse 5 years ago or 6 years ago? Whatever Zuck said about that, the metaverse, right? We're going to spend more time in the metaverse than we spend in real time. That would be great for Meta, if that was the case. ChatGPT, you can do everything in ChatGPT. And this woman, some executives, says over time we see ChatGPT evolving to become the operating system for your life. I mean, come on, okay, give me a break here for a second, right? I don't live in Silicon Valley, but what is the operating system of our life? It's other humans, right? It's our society. It's not some crap software. Right? The operating, I mean, this is truly Silicon Valley. That's the world they want us to have. You will not make money there. You will not be happy. You will just have a lot of noise. So this is important for us to realize that dehumanization is a very important business model for Silicon Valley. And you can see here the stock is going up. The red one is the stock market, and the job offerings are declining. So this is a policy issue now that we have to say, well, how do we keep the balance? This is why we're here. How do we protect creators? The number one threat for us is not technology, it's dehumanization by people who use technology, right? Replacing us with this. I'm all you need for the TikTok channel. Going to be like this? Remember that movie, Her? One of the best movies about AI ever. Okay. You think about that, what happened at the end? You know, he was asking her, how many other lovers do you have? And she said 3,427. That's a slightly disappointing moment for a man. But okay, so it's effortless, it's meaningless. The worst part is this, it's soulless. When you have this kind of product, a soulless product, why would you even bother? So this idea, the haircut machine, I'm sure you've seen this on TikTok or wherever, right? I do hope that's not real, but probably not. This is not what technology does. It does not create things like this. This is utopia. Here's the key question. Can we trust the people who make the tech? Well, the answer is, Sam looks pretty trustworthy, right? Looks like a nice chap. They're not evil people, not even Peter Thiel. Maybe he is evil, I don't know. But Elon Musk, I don't know. Can we trust them to create something that works for us? Or do they make it for what works for them, for trillion-dollar companies? What kind of protection do we need? Whenever you see a product that's using this kind of music, you already know that you're on the way to become a slave. Right? I call this Google music. And it makes you feel like everything's fine. But the bottom line is this, technology has no ethics. It's technology. If we want to have ethical things, we have to create it ourselves. I mean, this is an important fact that comes out of this. Hyper-personalized content, we're going to talk about that later. But the idea of creating content that's different for each viewer, where you can determine the pieces or the ending, or you put yourself in, right? Sounds interesting. But there are a lot of issues with that, right? Including the filter bubble issue. The issue is about essentially saying, we're going to put users into this micro environment where they can be manipulated, right? Where there's no shared experience. But of course, you can say, we don't need a shared experience, if that's the goal. I don't know, that's not the goal for me. But so I made some slop for you. Slop is like bad food, right? I asked AI to tell me what is important to share with you, right? And it made some amazing slop for me. Okay, what AI means for creators. Check out the first one, right? You will create frameworks, not final products. AI will remix and personalize your content indefinitely. Your brand voice becomes your most defensible asset. Okay, if you're 14 years old, you think this is real, right? But it's just bullshit. It's just utter nonsense. That's generated with the most obvious answers to make us feel like we know what we're talking about. It's momentarily entertaining, like this picture that I made about AI, how we grow AI. Right? Entertains you for about, 4.5 seconds. Right? But does it last? It needs the effort. Do not give up the effort. The effort is the most important part. That's how we create things that are good. When we stayed up all night to figure out one tiny cut to make the clip look good. That's part of the effort. So I'll summarize and then we'll go to our conversation. Large language models today are nothing more than common sense repository. Essentially what Ted Chiang says in his article, a dead metaphor machine. It takes content from the past and puts it together in a new way. Also very useful, but not really authentic. It will never solve the problem of creativity because it goes back to this database and generates new things. So he says actual humans will remain at the forefront of transforming. Okay, I know there's lots of arguments about this. Why do we need actual humans? They're just too expensive. Too much trouble. Can we get rid of them? And then, of course, our skills have to change. This is the skills from when you got your MBA or whatever, 10 years ago. And now, of course, the AI is saying, never mind the information and knowledge. I can do that. So the future of knowledge is that the AI does this, the data and information. And we do the other part, the creative part. That would be good if that works. Right? This is the creative part that gets us. And this is what we have to teach at school. We have to teach people at school and, of course, in life, purpose, wisdom, understanding, tacit knowledge, intuition, imagination, not just the facts and the figures. So, to wrap up, do not let yourself be framed by a technology. Essentially giving us the illusion that we can achieve this without work. All inspiration, no perspiration. There's no such thing. The only people making money with that model are the ones who are running the model. It will help us to use technology to do things that we couldn't do before. That's super important. That's why we need to focus on AI as a power tool. A power tool. I call this cava, like the Spanish champagne. Cognification, augmentation, virtualization. The things that I do every day, all of a sudden I can translate languages. I can overdub my video. I can virtualize my assets. These are all good things. They're not rocket science, but definitely very powerful. Most important, always keep the humans in the loop. The biggest danger for us is that we get lazy because we're looking at those tools and saying, maybe I can charge the customer the same price and then I just make it 50 times as fast and he wouldn't notice. Before you know it, the customer has its own person doing what you did for 1/10 of the price and you're out. So keep the human in the loop, create human value, make it unique. That's what it comes down to. Let's not confuse the tools and the telos, the purpose. Telos is the Greek word for purpose, for destination. We need to ask what the purpose is and why we're doing so. This is the key question. The question is not whether you use AI to generate a video or a game or whatever. The question is, what is the purpose and why? And what does it do? The rest is just tools. Nobody's going to ask you if you used Avid or Pro Tools when you create something. It's not important. It's why. Right? What does it do? What kind of message does it have? Where does it go? So my final word is from my book 10 years ago, embrace technology, but don't become it. That's the key to the future.